Today, we're going to tackle what works and what doesn't in many people's favorite episode in the Star Trek franchise. On this week's...
Yeah, it's the best five, worst five, know what I mean? Yeah, it's the best five, worst five Treks ever seen.
So many of you in other episodes have left comments that I forgot City on the Edge of Forever in rankings of things like time travel and single episode romances. I thought I'd address that I've purposely omitted this one from my rankings. Since the fanbase clearly believes this is the best in every category, what's the fun in bringing up the same episode week over week? I'd like to thank Moonjumper Reviews for suggesting today's topic. Since I can only show so much video from a single episode without upsetting the CBS overlords, you may notice that this is the first time I've inserted myself into one of these videos. And I'll be showing a lot of still frames to fill in. Get your pitchforks out and your keyboards ready to get mad in the comments that we're starting with the 5 worst things about City on the Edge of Forever. Number 5. The score. TOS sure had some great and terrible bits of background music. During almost every scene with Edith, it feels more like this music belongs in Little House on the Prairie than in Star Trek. Every time there's a gag, the music does something really cheesy to try to punch it up, and doesn't really work for me even when the joke does. Number 4. Uhura the set piece. I'm not sure there was a TOS character more underwritten than Uhura, as proven by it taking an entire series and 9 movies before finally getting some real development and backstory in the current season of Strange New Worlds. In this episode, she's just there for the sake of being there with this poorly written and delivered,
"Captain, I'm frightened."
I feel bad for Nichelle Nichols that they couldn't give this amazing woman something better to do. Number 3. Trespassing equals job. I have a real problem with how little sense the scene where Kirk and Spock trespass in the basement of a homeless shelter, admit to stealing and being chased by the police, only to be offered work in a place that should have all the cheap labor it could ever need. It makes Edith into a naive, one-dimensional character from the get-go. Number 2. Bones Gone Wild. Without McCoy injecting himself with a powerful stimulant, there would be no plot. I mean, unless you take the original Harlan Ellison script route, which doesn't involve McCoy, but a murderous drug dealer that's a member of the crew, which also really doesn't work well as a plot for Trek. Sorry to all you Ellison purists out there that believe the original script was better. To me, it's about the same, better in some ways, worse in others. In that context, Bones being crazed and then slinking around in the ruins on the planet is actually somehow good, I guess. And the worst thing in City on the Edge of Forever? Casual racism is casual. When Kirk and Spock are caught by the dumbest cop ever stealing some more appropriate period clothing, Kirk tries to explain Spock's ears and strange look as being Chinese. If this is where it ended, like the joke about Data being from South America, that would be par for the course in 1960s writing terms. But he had to go one step further and say that he got his head caught in a mechanical rice picker. TOS wasn't always the height of Star Trek's overall progressive viewpoint. And now for my favorite things about City on the Edge of Forever. Number 5. Transatlantic. It's small, but I really enjoy Edith's period-specific transatlantic accent. Since there's not much to elaborate on this topic, I'd like to point out that her character is credited as Sister Edith, suggesting she may be in some order of none that definitely isn't celibate. Number 4. Spocks Hobby. Probably the best bit in this episode is Spock creating this ever-expanding series of vacuum tubes and other analog tech to try and boost the computing power of his tricorder. If we apply any amount of 21st century technology knowledge to this, there's no way what Spock's building would make any real difference in computer power of a 23rd century device. But it is a fun way to show the passage of time across the week he and Kirk are stuck in 1920s New York. Number 3. Edith embodies Trek. While it was Edith's vision of a peaceful world that looks to the stars, that creates the alternate timeline due to America not stopping the Nazis, it's also basically Star Trek's mission statement. It's an oddly specific vision for the 1920s where sci-fi was barely a genre, but certainly the best summation of what Trek strives to teach us, up to that point in the franchise. Number 2. Moment of Sacrifice. After spending a week getting better acquainted, McCoy comes out of the woodwork and tries to save Edith from a truck that she had quite a lot of time to get out of the way of. Kirk stops him, knowing the outcome leads to the Federation's non-existence. There are many examples of the look on a character's face at the end of an episode being the best part, and Kirk's tortured look says it all. The best thing? Carl. The Guardian of Forever itself is one of the coolest methods of time travel we've seen in Trek, being depicted in 3 separate episodes and series across the franchise. For a while it bothered me that in Discovery he could send Georgiou wherever, but since his new form, as Carl tells us, the factions of the Temporal Cold War tried to use him for their own purposes. And I would surmise, based on absolutely nothing, that the Guardian was modified then to be able to send people to specific points in time. Either way, that big stone archway is one of the most iconic images in all of Trek. What's your favorite thing about City on the Edge of Forever?